And welcome back to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. We're continuing our canter through the course of Polish history, from the very early days to the more modern times. And I'm delighted to be joined again in the studio by Professor Krzysztof Jabłonka. And we're going to start with the very early times. Professor, welcome back.
Okay.
Can we start with what Poland looked like in the pre-Christian era? Who were the first people in Poland at that time?
Genezą Słowian do dzisiaj się zastanawiają nad tym naukowcy.
Scientists still wonder about the origin of the Slavs. In fact, it is the territory of present-time Poland that is most likely to be the place of origin from which the Slavs have spread in all directions.
Prawdopodobnie razem z Hunami rozgromiliśmy.
The first news about the Slavs has been around since the invasion of the Huns. It was likely with the Huns that our ancestors crushed the Goths, who marched through this land to Ukraine.
Kronikarza Jordanesa.
There was a huge state of Emenaric, and in the history of the Goths, written by the chronicler Jordanes, a ruler by the name of Boż is described. It is likely an abbreviation, most probably from Bolesław or Bożydar, with a meaning similar to God's gift. The terrible chief of the Goths, Venitar, destroyer of the Venids, was crucified. The next news is related to Byzantium in the 6th century. We know that another Asian tribe, the Pannonian Avars, was raided then. In their captivity, the Slavs lasted some 60 to 70 years. Slavic nature is mild, but when they get upset, it can be dangerous. So there was an uprising.
Czyli mielibyśmy teraz bardzo ważną 1400. rocznicę tego wydarzenia.
At that time, the Avars besieged Constantinople. It was the year 620, and the Slavs rebelled. They called for help of Frankian merchants, from whom they wanted to buy weapons. The so-called Frankish axes were then useful in combat and very handy. They looked like the logo of a Carrefour store, 2 axes on a stick. This axe was wrapped around the arm. It was handy, although not used for chopping wood, but for throwing. These axes were thrown in huge numbers during the attack. Back then it was one of the newest weapons. A French merchant from the city of Synonium, today's Sens in France, brought these axes to the country of the Slavs, and they called him king.
No i ci Słowianie okrzyknęli go królem. I to był rok 623.
It was 623. Indeed, with the help of this man, the Avars were defeated. According to the legend, it was the Avars who taught Poles how to ride horses, which later became very useful for the Poles. For about 10 years, Samon was a Slavic ruler. It is not known where he had his capital, but the city of Velehrad, or the Great Castle, is suspected.
Wiemy, gdzie miał stolicę, ale podejrzewa się miasto Velehrad, wielki gród po słowiańsku.
It was likely there that he received the homage and subjugation of all Slavs in the area, so it was probably also the Vistula River to the north of the Carpathians, the Sorbs living in the Elbe River.
Również Wiślanie na północ od Karpat byli to.
We don't have any chronicles from those times other than the Frankish ones, because the Slavs couldn't write at the time. They did not have the alphabet, which the apostles Cyril and Methodius gave us later, so we were dependent on the very important chronicle of Fedegar, who described what happened quite early, that is 40 years after the events. Well, the Franciscan king, Dagobert III, sent messengers demanding that Samon surrendered. Samon refused and then called himself a Slav.
Poddania mu się, ponieważ jesteś Frankijczykiem.
We still don't know to this day on what basis some legends of Southern Slavs, Slovenians, made him a true Slav. Maybe he was. That is, however, difficult to establish.
Może i był. Tego oczywiście się już nie da stwierdzić.
And so, Professor, could you now say some words about how Samo's estate developed?
Największym momentem w dziejach państwa Samona jest wielka bitwa pod Wogastisburgiem.
The most important moment in the history of Samon's country was the Great Battle of Wogatisburg. Fredegar described it very precisely, saying that it was a huge expedition of all Franks against all Slavs, and that Saman was able to mobilize all Slavic tribes.
No, najbardziej podejrzana jest miejscowość Vogastisrode.
They met in a border town. It is still unknown which town it was. It was suspected to be located somewhere on the border between Saxony and Thuringia. Let us remember that at that time Saxony was inhabited by Slavs. A three-day battle took place there on Easter 633. There are even discussions about the year the battle took place. At that time, the time, or more precisely the calendar, was still measured by the years of the ruler's reign. So in the third year of Dagobert I's reign, there was a battle that lasted 3 days. During this battle, the Slavs were able to withdraw first, trap themselves, then endure the second day, and on the third day they destroyed those poor Franks, about whom Fredegar writes that God punished them for their sins. A dozen or so thousand of them died there. In any case, the battle was lost by the Franconian peoples, and the continued existence of the Slavic land depended on this battle. Later the story is less well described. Saman dies in 658, has 23 sons, so when he divided his land between them, small Slavic states began to develop. It was the Horutan state, or present-day Slovenia, the beginnings of Croatia. Also, the Pannonian state was created, which existed before the Hungarian people were formed. Finally, a state was created in Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Moravia. We know some things about the Łużyczans, the Serbo-Łużyczan people on the Elbe, but we know nothing about the Polish lands. They were most likely created because from the geographical point of view the timeline is correct, but the 8th century was the Dark Age. Not many chronicles were written in the whole of Europe, but especially in our area. It was only when the Carolingian monarchy blossomed that the first news from the areas we are talking about came, as it was on the borderline of the first universal European monarchy. Then, Slavic borderline territories appeared. They were called marks. Among others, it will be Moravia, which blossomed in 823 as a large, mature Slavic state. It will be called the Great Moravia. However, we have one record from 805, when the son of Charlemagne defeated the Slavic ruler, who was called Lechos. The founder of the Polish state was Lech. Such is a mythical creation. We do not know if he existed, but someone did found this state, so we take the name Lech. It must have been some descendant of Lech, so the first ruler of Poland, who appeared in the Czech Republic, beating the ruler of the Carolingian state, the great Franconian monarchy.
Bijąc się z władcą państwa Karolingów, z wielką monarchią frankońską.
That's all we've got time for today, for this episode. So it remains for me to say thank you, Professor, for your fascinating commentary on Polish history. Do join us again on Poland Daily History, where we look at the fascinating history of this exciting country.